There is a pattern in American consumer debt that nobody talks about. A pattern so predictable, so mathematically precise that once you see it, you can't unsee it. $18.6 trillion. That is the total household debt in the United States right now, the highest figure in American history. Credit card debt, $1.13 trillion, also a record. Auto loans, $1.6 trillion. Student loans, $1.77 trillion. Mortgages, over $12 trillion. But here's what should terrify you. The middle class is carrying the weight of all of it. Not the wealthy, not the corporations, not the government. The American middle class is being erased by debt, one payment at a time. And this debt-to-default pattern is the exact same one that appeared before every major economic shock in U.S. history. Let me show you. This pattern has repeated 3 times in the last 25 years, each explosion bigger than the last, each one following the exact same sequence. Let me show you the progression. The year 2000, the dot-com bubble. Consumer debt had reached $7 trillion. Credit was cheap. Interest rates were low. Americans borrowed heavily to invest in tech stocks, real estate, and consumption. The stock market climbed to unsustainable levels. The Nasdaq peaked at over 5,000 points. Then reality hit. The bubble burst. The Nasdaq crashed 78%. Trillions in market value evaporated. Unemployment spiked. Consumer spending collapsed. Recession followed. Total consumer debt at the time of collapse, $7 trillion. 8 years later, 2008, the Great Financial Crisis. Consumer debt had grown to $13 trillion, nearly double what it was in 2000. Cheap credit had fueled a housing boom. Subprime mortgages were issued to millions who couldn't afford them. Home prices climbed far beyond sustainable levels. Banks packaged these risky mortgages into securities and sold them globally. When housing prices began to fall, the entire system collapsed. Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy with over $35 trillion in derivative exposure. Bear Stearns collapsed. AIG needed $180 billion to survive. The global financial system nearly destroyed itself. Governments and central banks responded with $29 trillion in bailouts and guarantees, the largest financial rescue in human history. Total consumer debt at the time of collapse, $13 trillion. 12 years later, 2020, the pandemic recession. Consumer debt had climbed to $16 trillion, once again, higher than the previous peak. For over a decade, interest rates had been near zero. Credit was abundant. Americans borrowed to buy homes, cars, education, and everyday expenses. When COVID-19 lockdowns froze the economy, the system faced total collapse. The Federal Reserve printed trillions. Congress passed emergency stimulus bills. Unemployment benefits were extended. Eviction moratoriums were enacted. The system barely survived. Total consumer debt at the time, $16 trillion. And now, 2025. Consumer debt has reached $18.6 trillion, the highest in history. $7 trillion in 2000, $13 trillion in 2008, $16 trillion in 2020, $18.6 trillion today. The pattern is clear. Debt grows between crises. Each crisis is triggered when debt becomes unsustainable. Each collapse requires a bigger bailout than the last. But here's what makes 2025 different. There is no bailout left. Interest rates are already high. Central banks have exhausted their tools. Government debt is at record levels. When the next collapse comes, and it will come, there won't be enough money in the world to stop it. Americans didn't get richer over the last 40 years. They got better credit limits. They didn't get wage growth. They got more access to debt. And the government didn't fix the economy. They just made borrowing cheaper. Think about this. Over the last 40 years, wages increased only 17% after adjusting for inflation. 17% in 4 decades. But during that same period, housing prices increased 118%. Healthcare costs increased 200%. College tuition increased 350%. Everything essential got more expensive. Wages barely moved. So what filled the gap? Debt. In 1980, the average American family could buy a home with 3 years of household income. Today, it takes 8 years of income. In 1980, a year of college tuition cost the equivalent of 1,200 hours of minimum wage work. Today, it costs over 5,000 hours. In 1980, healthcare costs represented 9% of GDP. Today, it's 18%. The system didn't break because people became irresponsible. It broke because survival became unaffordable. Families borrowed to pay for housing. They borrowed to pay for healthcare. They borrowed to pay for education. They borrowed to maintain the same standard of living their parents had. But their wages didn't grow fast enough to repay the debt. This is the trap. Wages stagnant, costs rising, debt the only option. Every year, the gap widens. Every year, more debt is required just to stay in place. And when the debt becomes unpayable, the system collapses. This is not a failure of individuals. This is a failure of the system. A system designed to extract wealth from the middle class and transfer it upward. Through interest payments, through rent, through healthcare premiums, through tuition. Slowly, predictably, mathematically, the middle class has been hollowed out. Not by accidents, but by design.
Let me show you exactly how the debt trap works. 3 mechanisms: credit cards, auto loans, mortgages, each one designed to extract maximum wealth over time. First, credit cards. The average American household now carries $6,360 in credit card debt. The average interest rate, 24.8%, the highest level ever recorded. That means if you owe $10,000 and only pay the minimum monthly payment, it will take you 28 years to pay it off. And you will pay 3 times the original amount in interest. $10,000 borrowed becomes $30,000 paid. This is not borrowing, this is extraction. Credit cards are the highest profit financial product ever invented. Banks make billions from interest, late fees, and penalties. And they target the group with the least financial power, the middle class. Why? Because the middle class has just enough income to make payments, but not enough to escape. They are the perfect customer, not wealthy enough to pay in full, not poor enough to default immediately, trapped in a cycle of minimum payments that never reduce the principal. Year after year, payment after payment, wealth extracted, and total credit card debt in America, $1.13 trillion, the highest in history. Second, auto loans. The average car payment is now $747 per month for new cars, $567 per month for used cars. Both are record highs. But here's the real crisis. 60% of auto loans issued in the last 2 years are underwater. People owe more than the car is worth. The average auto loan term is now 72 months, 6 years to pay off a car. Some loans stretch to 84 months, 7 years, longer than most people keep the car. This means people are still making payments on cars they no longer own, and delinquency rates on auto loans are the highest since the Great Recession. People are defaulting. Cars are being repossessed. Families are losing transportation. And without a car, they can't work. Without work, they can't make payments. A spiral. Total auto loan debt in America, $1.6 trillion. Third, mortgages. Mortgage debt now exceeds $12 trillion. The average home price has risen so high that families are taking out 30-year loans for houses they cannot afford. Interest rates jumped from 3% to nearly 7% in less than 2 years. Monthly payments skyrocketed. But here's the devastating part. Americans aren't buying homes anymore. They're buying monthly payments. They don't ask, "Can I afford this house?" They ask, "What's the minimum payment?" That is the mindset of a society trapped in debt. Homes are no longer assets. They are liabilities. Monthly obligations that last decades. Payments that consume a third of household income. And when interest rates rise, when jobs are lost, when the economy contracts, those payments become unpayable. Foreclosures spike. Families lose homes. Wealth evaporates. The American dream becomes the American trap.
The middle class used to be the backbone of the American economy. But look at the numbers. In 1970, 61% of Americans were middle class. Families with stable incomes, home ownership, savings, and retirement plans. Today, only 43%. Where did they go? Upward into wealth? No. Most fell downward into poverty or financial insecurity. The middle class isn't shrinking, it's being erased. Here's what middle class used to mean. In 1970, a single income could support a family of 4. Buy a home, pay for college, save for retirement, afford healthcare, take vacations, build wealth. 1 income, 4 people, comfortable life. Today, 2 incomes can barely support a family of 4. Rent is unaffordable. College requires loans. Retirement savings are non-existent. Healthcare costs are crippling. Vacations are luxuries. Wealth building is impossible. 2 incomes, 4 people, barely surviving. Let me show you the numbers. The average American now has $1,200 in savings, $6,000 in credit card debt, no retirement plan, no emergency fund. 1 unexpected expense, a medical bill, a car repair, a job loss, and they fall into financial ruin, permanently. This is not middle class. This is financial fragility. 1 paycheck away from disaster. And it's not just individuals. Entire generations are being locked out of wealth. Millennials, the first generation in American history, expected to be poorer than their parents. Home ownership rates among young adults have collapsed. Student loan debt has exploded. Wages have stagnated. The economic ladder that previous generations climbed has been pulled up. Generational wealth transfer has stopped. In previous generations, parents left homes, savings, and assets to their children. Today, parents have nothing to leave. Homes are mortgaged, savings are depleted, retirement accounts are empty. The wealth that took generations to build is being consumed by medical bills, elder care, and rising costs. And the next generation inherits nothing. No down payment for a home, no safety net for emergencies, no foundation for wealth building. They start from zero, in debt, with no path upward. The middle class isn't struggling, it's disappearing. Wealth is concentrating at the top while everyone else sinks. This is the pattern of empire collapse. A small elite extracts everything. The majority falls into poverty,
and the system becomes unsustainable. All these pressure points create the same chain reaction every time. Stage 1. Debt rises faster than wages. Stage 2. Families start missing payments. Stage 3. Delinquencies spike. Stage 4. Banks tighten lending. Stage 5. Consumers stop spending. Stage 6. The economy contracts. Stage 7. The system collapses. This is the pattern that appeared before 2000, before 2008, before 2020. And it's happening again right now. Delinquency rates on credit cards are rising. Defaults on auto loans are spiking. Mortgage delinquencies are climbing. These are the early warning signs. The same signals that appeared before every previous collapse. But most Americans don't even know it's happening. They see their own struggles, their own debt, their own missed payments. But they don't see the system-wide pattern. Millions of people simultaneously reaching the breaking point. When enough families default, the cascade begins. Banks stop lending. Credit dries up. Consumer spending collapses. Businesses cut jobs. Unemployment rises. Defaults accelerate. The feedback loop intensifies. This is how financial systems collapse. Not suddenly, gradually. One default at a time, until the weight becomes unbearable and the entire structure gives way. Right now, credit card delinquencies are at the highest level since 2011. Auto loan delinquencies are at the highest level since 2010. Personal loan defaults are accelerating. This is the same pattern that appeared in 2007 before the 2008 collapse. The same early warnings, the same pressure points, the same trajectory. And here's what makes this collapse different. In 2008, the Federal Reserve could cut interest rates to near zero. They had room to act. Today, interest rates are already high. There's no room left. In 2008, the government could bail out banks with printed money. Inflation was low. They had space to act. Today, inflation is a threat. Printing more money risks hyperinflation. In 2008, consumer debt was $13 trillion. Today, it's $18.6 trillion. Larger debt, fewer tools, less room to maneuver. The pattern says the collapse is next, and when it comes, it will be larger, faster, and more destructive than 2008, because the debt is bigger, the system is more fragile, and there's no bailout left.
The truth is simple. The U.S. economy cannot survive without debt. If consumers stop borrowing, the entire system stalls. GDP contracts, businesses close, jobs disappear. If consumers keep borrowing, they get crushed under unpayable debt. Defaults spike, banks fail. The system collapses anyway. This is the paradox. The system requires debt to function, but the debt has become unsustainable. There is no way out, only a reset. The middle class is being erased, not by accident, by design. The system that extracts wealth through interest, rent, healthcare, and education. A system that rewards those who already have wealth and punishes those trying to build it. A system where wages stagnate while costs explode, where survival requires debt, where debt leads to default, where default
leads to collapse. This is the pattern, and the pattern is repeating right now. You can't stop the collapse, but you can see it coming. $18.6 trillion in household debt, $1.13 trillion in credit cards, record delinquencies, record interest rates, wages that haven't kept pace in 40 years, costs that have doubled or tripled, a middle class falling into financial ruin. These are not random events. This is the pattern: debt, delinquency, default, collapse. The same sequence every time. The only question left is when, not if. When? Subscribe to track the pattern as it unfolds, because the middle class is being erased, and most people won't see it until it's already gone.